The city was alive with noise that Sunday afternoon. Cars moved slowly through traffic, people hurried across the streets, and the sun shone softly through tall buildings. Among all that rush, there was one man who walked with no hurry at all. He had nowhere special to be, no one waiting for him, and no real reason to rush. His name was Daniel, a quiet man in his mid-30s who had spent most of his adult life working in a small office. Every day for him felt almost the same. He woke up early, made coffee that tasted a little bitter, took the same crowded bus, sat at the same desk, and came home to an empty apartment. Nothing ever changed. His friends from college were all busy with families or careers that seemed much more exciting than his. Sometimes he looked at them on social media, smiling in pictures with children or at vacations, and he would feel a strange emptiness inside. It wasn't jealousy exactly, just a quiet ache, as if something was missing in his life. That afternoon, Daniel had gone for a walk in the park near his apartment. It was something he often did on weekends, not because he loved the outdoors, but because it gave him a reason to step away from screens for a while. He liked watching people, guessing their stories, imagining what their lives were like. There were families having picnics, children running after colorful kites, and couples walking hand in hand. Everyone seemed to have someone, something, a purpose. He sat down on a wooden bench near the fountain. The sound of water splashing relaxed him. He took out his phone and started scrolling, half paying attention to the world around him. After a few minutes, something caught his eye. Just a few steps away, a little boy stood alone near the fountain. He couldn't have been more than 6 years old. His small hands were clenched and his eyes were filled with tears. Daniel looked around. There were no adults near the boy. No one seemed to notice him. For a moment, Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure if he should go near. Maybe the boy's parents were nearby, maybe he was just waiting. But then the boy let out a soft sob, the kind that came from fear more than sadness. That sound hit Daniel in a strange way. It made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Concern. He stood up slowly and walked toward the child. "Hey there," he said gently, keeping his voice calm so the boy wouldn't get scared. "Are you okay?" The boy wiped his face with the back of his hand and looked up, his eyes red from crying. "I can't find my mom," he said in a small, shaky voice. Daniel crouched down so he could look at him at eye level. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Eli," the boy said. "I was feeding the birds. I turned around and she was gone." His lower lip trembled again. Daniel glanced around, scanning the area. The park was full of people, but it suddenly felt huge and confusing. He didn't see anyone looking for a child. He tried to stay calm. "It's okay, Eli, we'll find your mom," he said, smiling a little to reassure him. "Let's sit down for a minute. I'll help you." He led the boy to the bench where he had been sitting. Eli held his hand tightly the whole time, as if afraid he might disappear too. Daniel sat the boy down and said, "Do you remember what your mom was wearing?" Eli thought for a moment. "A blue dress," he said. "And she has brown hair. She was holding my backpack." "All right, that helps," Daniel replied. He looked around again, but with so many people walking by, it was impossible to spot anyone specific. "Do you want something to drink?" "You look thirsty." The boy nodded. Daniel quickly went to the small stall nearby and bought a juice box. When he came back, Eli took it with both hands and drank quietly. For a while, Daniel didn't say anything. He just sat there, keeping an eye on the people passing by, hoping to see a woman in a blue dress running toward them. Minutes passed. No one came. Daniel decided to do something. He took out his phone and called the park security office. He explained that he had found a lost child near the fountain. The guard told him to stay there and someone would come soon. As they waited, Daniel tried to keep the boy calm. "So you were feeding birds?" he asked. Eli nodded. "I like birds. My mom says I have to be gentle because they get scared easily." Daniel smiled. "Your mom sounds nice." "She is," the boy said proudly. "She promised we'd go for ice cream after the park." That simple sentence made Daniel's heart ache in a way he didn't expect. He thought about his own mother. She had passed away when he was in college. She used to take him to the park when he was small too. He remembered her holding his hand, buying him ice cream, telling him stories about clouds and shapes in the sky. He hadn't thought about those moments in years. As he looked at Eli, something stirred inside him. A mix of nostalgia and sadness, but also warmth. For once, his mind wasn't filled with thoughts about work or loneliness. He was fully present, focused only on helping this small boy. After about 20 minutes, a park security guard arrived. He was a kind-looking man with a radio clipped to his belt. "You the one who called about the lost child?" he asked. "Yes," Daniel said. "This is Eli. He got separated from his mother near the fountain." The guard crouched down and spoke to Eli. "Hey buddy, don't worry. We'll find your mom soon. We already got a call from a woman looking for her son. She's on her way here." Eli's eyes lit up instantly. "She's coming?" "That's right," the guard said with a smile. "She's coming right here." Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. The boy's face changed from fear to excitement. He started looking around eagerly, hoping to spot her. A few minutes later, a woman came running toward them. Her hair was messy, her eyes wide with panic. "Eli," she cried out. "Mom!" The boy shouted, jumping off the bench and running straight into her arms. She knelt down and hugged him tightly, tears rolling down her cheeks. She kept whispering, I'm so sorry," over and over. Daniel stood a few feet away, quietly watching. He didn't want to interrupt the moment. Seeing them together made something inside him soften. It was such a pure, emotional sight, the kind of love that didn't need words. After a minute, the woman looked up at Daniel. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you so much for staying with him. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't here." Daniel smiled gently. "I'm just glad he's safe," he said. "He's a brave little guy." Eli turned to him and smiled too. "Thank you," he said in a shy voice. "You're welcome," Daniel replied. "Now go get that ice cream, all right?" The mother laughed softly through her tears. She thanked him again and walked away, holding her son's hand tightly. Daniel stood there for a moment, watching them until they disappeared into the crowd. When they were gone, he sat back down on the bench. The park felt quieter now, even though the sounds were the same. The laughter, the chatter, the birds. But inside him something was different. He felt strangely peaceful, almost proud, but also thoughtful. It was such a small thing, helping a lost child. But it made him feel alive in a way he hadn't in years. He looked at the empty juice box beside him and smiled. He didn't even know why, but it felt like a reminder that small actions mattered. He had spent years thinking his life had no meaning, that nothing he did really made a difference. But today, for the first time, he had done something that truly mattered to someone. As he stood up to leave, the sun was beginning to set. The sky turned orange and the fountain sparkled under the fading light. Daniel walked slowly toward the exit, his hands in his pockets, his mind quiet but full. He didn't know it yet, but this small moment would stay with him. It would be the start of something he had been missing all along, a reason to care, to act, to live for something beyond himself. That night, as he lay in bed, Daniel kept seeing the image of the boy hugging his mother. He could almost feel the warmth of that hug himself. He smiled in the dark, a real smile, the kind that came from deep inside. Maybe, he thought, life was trying to tell him something. Maybe purpose wasn't something you searched for. It was something you created, one kind act at a time. And with that thought, he fell asleep more peacefully than he had in a long, long time. The next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight slipped through the curtains, spreading a soft glow across his small apartment. For the first time in months, he didn't feel that heavy sense of emptiness when he opened his eyes. His mind immediately went back to the little boy in the park. The tears, the tiny trembling hands, and that big smile when he reunited with his mother. He lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling. Something about yesterday kept replaying in his head. It wasn't just about helping a lost child. It was about how it made him feel. He hadn't felt that kind of meaning in years. It was simple, yet powerful. One small moment of doing good had changed the way he looked at himself. He got up, made coffee, and stood by the window. Down below, the city was already buzzing with life. People walked quickly, cars honked, and buses filled the streets. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry, chasing something. Daniel wondered how many of them felt the same way he had for so long, lost even while following a routine. At work, things were the same as always. The office buzzed with typing sounds, phones ringing, and coworkers chatting about deadlines. Daniel sat at his desk trying to focus on the report he needed to finish, but his mind wandered. He kept thinking about how he could do more. Not for his job, but for people. He wasn't sure what that meant yet, but he knew the feeling wouldn't just fade away. During lunch, he told his colleague Leo, about what happened in the park. Leo listened while eating his sandwich, nodding politely. "That's nice of you," he said. "But man, you were lucky. You can't just talk to random kids these days. People could misunderstand." Daniel understood what he meant. The world had become cautious, even suspicious. But deep down, he also knew that sometimes doing the right thing required courage. Not the kind that fought battles, but the kind that reached out to someone in need without expecting anything back. When he got home that evening, Daniel didn't switch on the TV right away like he usually did. Instead, he sat quietly with a notebook and pen. He wrote one simple question at the top of the page. What makes me feel alive? He stared at the question for a long time. At first, he didn't know how to answer. Then he wrote, helping others. That small sentence surprised him. He had never written or even said it before, but it felt true. He thought about how much of his life had gone by without meaning. Maybe, he thought, it was time to change that. Over the next few days, the idea stayed with him. He started looking online for ways to volunteer. There were so many organizations, food drives, shelters, hospitals, schools. He didn't know where to start. Then one evening, while scrolling through community listings, he saw a post from a local center that helped children from struggling families. They were looking for part-time volunteers to assist with reading and tutoring. He hesitated for a moment. He had no teaching experience, and he wasn't sure if he'd be good with kids. But something inside him whispered that he should try. Without thinking too much, he filled out the online form and sent it. 2 days later, he got an email inviting him to visit the center. On Saturday morning, Daniel arrived at a small building tucked between an old bakery and a corner grocery store. The walls were painted bright yellow, and drawings made by children were taped on the windows. As soon as he walked in, he was greeted by a woman at the front desk. She introduced herself as Clara, the volunteer coordinator. "Thank you for coming," she said warmly. "We always need helping hands." She gave him a quick tour. A few small classrooms, a play area, and a cozy reading room filled with old but colorful books. The place wasn't fancy, but it felt full of life. Laughter echoed from one of the rooms where kids were playing a board game. Clara explained how things worked. Volunteers helped the children with reading, homework, and sometimes just listened to them talk. Many of the kids came from families going through tough times. Some had parents who worked multiple jobs. Others had lost one parent or lived with grandparents. As Daniel listened, something in his heart tightened. These were real lives, real stories. Children who needed care, attention, and kindness. He agreed to start the following week. When he left the center that day, the air felt different. He felt lighter, almost excited. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew this was the right step. The following week, Daniel walked into the center again, this time with a nervous smile. The children were already there, sitting in small groups. Some were laughing, others arguing over crayons, and a few sat quietly with books. Clara introduced him to a group of kids who needed help with reading. One of them, a shy boy named Leo, reminded Daniel of the child he'd helped in the park. Leo spoke softly and avoided eye contact. Daniel sat beside him and asked what story he was reading. The boy showed him the book, a simple one about animals. They started reading together, word by word. At first, Leo stumbled, but Daniel didn't rush him. He encouraged him gently, cheering when he got a word right. After a while, Leo began to smile just a little. For the next hour, they read, drew pictures of animals, and talked about their favorite ones. When it was time to leave, Leo looked up and said, "Are you coming back next week?" Daniel smiled. "Yes, I'll be here." That small question stayed with him. It wasn't just about reading. It was about trust. That simple bond between them filled Daniel with a quiet sense of pride and peace. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became a regular face at the center. He helped children with their homework, played games, and even started a small drawing contest for fun. The kids began to look forward to his visits, and so did he. Every time he walked into that bright yellow building, it felt like stepping into a world that made sense. One day, after class, Clara stopped him near the exit. "You're good with them," she said. "You have a calm way that makes the kids feel safe." Daniel smiled modestly. "I think they help me more than I help them," he replied honestly. That evening, as he walked home, he realized how true that was. The children had given him something his job, money, or comfort never could: a feeling of purpose. Each smile, each small thank you reminded him that he mattered. His life slowly began to change. He still worked at the same office, but now he looked forward to the evenings and weekends. He no longer spent his nights watching TV alone. Instead, he read about child development, learned fun teaching tricks, and even started planning activities for the center. His coworkers noticed the change too. "You seem happier these days," one of them said during lunch. Daniel simply smiled. "Maybe I just found something that makes sense," he said. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, but it was real. The emptiness that used to sit quietly in his heart was slowly fading, replaced by a steady warmth that came from doing good for others. One evening, as he was leaving the center, he saw Leo again. The boy ran up to him waving a small piece of paper. It was a drawing of a man and a child standing near a fountain. Above it, the boy had written in shaky handwriting, "Thank you for helping me read." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He knelt down and said softly, "You did all the work, buddy. I just helped a little." But inside, he knew it was more than that. Helping this boy and all the others was helping him. It was healing something deep inside he didn't even know was broken. That night, as he walked home, the streets felt brighter, the air lighter. He passed by the same park where everything had started, the place where he had found the lost child. He paused for a moment, looking at the fountain shining under the streetlights. He smiled quietly to himself. Life had a strange way of leading people where they were meant to go. He had thought he was helping someone that day, but in truth, that small boy had helped him find a new direction. Daniel kept walking, his steps slow but full of peace. For the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel lost. He felt found, not by chance, but by purpose. Daniel's mornings started to feel lighter and his nights fuller of purpose. The world outside his small apartment no longer seemed dull or repetitive. Every walk to the center, every conversation with a child, became a thread weaving new meaning into his life. He no longer dreaded the monotony of his office job. Instead, he carried with him a quiet anticipation, the kind that made even small tasks at work feel bearable. It was a Saturday morning when he first realized how much he had changed. The sun was soft, slipping gently through the branches of trees lining the streets as he walked toward the center. The sounds of the city, cars, distant chatter, birds felt welcoming, almost alive in a way they hadn't before. He smiled to himself, thinking of the kids he would see, the stories he would hear, and the laughter that awaited him. When he entered the building, he noticed Clara arranging books on a shelf. She greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Daniel. The kids have been talking about you all week." Daniel laughed softly. "I hope that's a good thing," he replied. Clara smiled knowingly. "Oh, it's more than good. They look forward to your visits." He felt a strange warmth inside. It wasn't pride exactly. It was something deeper, a quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing your presence mattered. Inside, the children were busy with crafts and drawing. Some were coloring animals, others making paper airplanes. A few looked shy and hesitant at first, but Daniel knew that over time, trust and comfort would grow. One of the children, a girl with curly hair and big eyes, ran to him holding a drawing she had made. "Look, I drew you," she said proudly. Daniel bent down to see the picture. It was a simple sketch of a man sitting with children in a room filled with books. He could see the attempt at detail, the bright colors and the smiling faces. "Wow," he said. "This is amazing. Thank you for sharing it with me." The girl beamed, and he noticed the confidence in her eyes. It reminded him of the little boy in the park, the moment of trust and relief when they had found his mother. Something inside him stirred. He realized that every child here in some way needed a hand to hold, someone to care, and a person to listen. And he could be that person. That day, as Daniel helped the children with reading and homework, he felt a rhythm forming. It was simple but powerful. Listen, guide, encourage. Some of the children struggled to read aloud. Others had trouble writing neatly, but he never rushed them. He praised every effort, no matter how small, and gave gentle corrections when needed. By the end of the morning, he felt a quiet exhaustion, the kind that comes from meaningful work, not stress. During lunch break, he sat on a bench outside the center, watching children playing in the yard. He thought about how far he had come in such a short time. Not long ago, he had felt directionless, lonely, and unsure of his own value. Now, the act of being present for these children had given him something he didn't expect, a sense of purpose. He also noticed something else. He had started to listen more deeply, not just to children but to people in general. At work, he noticed colleagues' moods, their small worries, and their unspoken tensions. On the street, he noticed people's expressions, their hurried steps, the way some moved with fatigue while others moved with hope. He realized that paying attention, offering help, and being present could change lives, sometimes in ways too small to see immediately. That afternoon, one of the children, a boy named Sam, approached him quietly. Sam had been struggling in class, often frustrated with reading and drawing attention to himself. "Daniel," he said softly, "can you help me with this?" Daniel knelt down beside him. Sam held a small notebook filled with words he found difficult. Daniel guided him patiently, showing how letters formed sounds and how sentences flowed together. Sam stumbled several times, but with each correction he smiled a little more, gaining confidence. When he finally read the last sentence correctly, his face lit up with pride. "You did it, Sam," Daniel exclaimed gently. "I did?" the boy asked, wide-eyed. "Yes, you did," Daniel said, feeling a deep satisfaction. "See what happens when you keep trying?" Sam grinned, and Daniel felt a wave of warmth. These were small victories, almost invisible to the outside world, but they were monumental for the children. And for Daniel, each of these victories became a mirror reflecting his own growth. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel's presence at the center became constant. Parents and children began recognizing him, and some even expressed their gratitude. The staff noticed how naturally he connected with the kids, how he seemed to understand not just what they needed to learn, but also how they felt. Daniel realized that helping didn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes a listening ear, a kind word, or a small moment of patience could change everything. One rainy afternoon, Daniel stayed late at the center. The children had gone home, and he was tidying the room, putting away books and papers. He paused by the window, watching rain fall in heavy sheets outside. The streets glistened under streetlights, and puddles reflected tiny flashes of color from passing cars. He thought back to the day he had found the lost child in the park. That day had seemed ordinary, yet it had been extraordinary. It had changed his path, leading him here to these children, to this purpose. Without realizing it, he had found a place where he mattered, not through a job, money, or recognition, but through simple human connection. That evening, Clara approached him. "Daniel, have you ever thought about taking on more responsibility here?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Well, you have a way with these kids," she said. "You understand them. We have a few programs coming up, mentoring, community events, reading sessions. We could use someone like you to help organize and lead." Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure if he was ready for that. Leadership, responsibility. These were big words, and he had spent so long avoiding challenges. But then he remembered Sam's proud smile, the drawings from the other children, the little moments of trust and joy. And he realized that maybe stepping up wasn't about ego. It was about making a difference. "I'd like that," he said quietly, with more confidence than he expected. Over the next weeks, Daniel took on more responsibility. He helped plan reading programs, organized small events, and even began a mentorship program for older children who needed guidance. Each new task brought challenges, but also satisfaction. He discovered skills he didn't know he had: organization, patience, creativity. He learned to communicate with children in ways that encouraged them rather than pressured them. One day, during a community event, Daniel noticed a small boy standing alone, shyly watching other children play. Daniel walked over, crouched down, and said, "Hey there, want to join us?" The boy nodded slowly. Daniel spent the afternoon with him, helping him build a small project and encouraging him to play. By the end of the day, the boy was laughing and running with others, his initial fear replaced by joy. Daniel smiled quietly to himself, recognizing a familiar feeling, the same feeling he had experienced the day he helped Eli in the park. That night, Daniel sat in his apartment reflecting on how his life had changed. He remembered the boy in the fountain, the lost child who had sparked everything. Helping Eli had opened a door, and he had stepped through it. Now he was part of something bigger than himself, something meaningful. He realized that purpose wasn't a destination. It was a series of moments, a chain of acts that created impact no matter how small. For the first time in years, Daniel felt truly alive. His life had direction, his days were full, and his heart felt lighter. He had found his place, his calling, not through chance, but through choosing to care, to act, and to be present for those who needed it most. And he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The weeks passed, and Daniel's life continued to change in ways he had never imagined. Every morning the city seemed brighter, every day a little fuller, and every encounter with a child a reminder that he was making a difference. He had begun to realize that helping wasn't just about being there in the moment. It was about showing children that someone cared, that someone noticed them, and that they were not alone in the world. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Daniel arrived at the center to find a small group of children sitting quietly in the reading room. A young boy named Leo looked up at him with wide, nervous eyes. Leo had always been shy, avoiding attention, keeping to himself. Daniel remembered the first time he had met him, and how difficult it had been to get him to speak. Now he could see a tiny spark of trust in the boy's eyes, a spark that made him smile. "Hey, Leo," Daniel said softly. "Do you want to read a story with me today?" Leo nodded hesitantly. Daniel guided him through the pages, encouraging him when he stumbled over words, praising him when he succeeded. It wasn't just about reading aloud. It was about showing patience, providing reassurance, and letting the boy know that mistakes were okay. By the end of the session, Leo was smiling and even laughed at a funny part of the story. Watching that small transformation, Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that these moments, small as they seemed, were powerful. Each child's confidence, each smile, each expression of trust was a reflection of hope. And it reminded him why he had started volunteering in the first place. After the reading session, Clara approached him. "Daniel, we're organizing a weekend outing for the children," she said. "Some of the kids haven't been to a park in years. Would you help lead it?" Daniel agreed immediately. He didn't hesitate. The thought of helping them experience joy outside the center excited him. The weekend arrived, and he found himself standing among a group of energetic children, all wearing bright jackets and hats, ready to explore. Some ran ahead laughing, some held tightly to volunteers' hands, and some, like Leo, hung back quietly, taking in the sights at their own pace. Daniel stayed close to Leo, walking beside him, pointing out birds, flowers, and funny shapes in the clouds. Slowly, the boy's initial shyness began to fade, replaced by curiosity and laughter. When they reached a small playground, Daniel encouraged him to try the swings. Hesitant at first, Leo eventually climbed on, and soon his laughter joined the chorus of children enjoying the day. Watching Leo and the others, Daniel thought about how far he had come since that first day in the park. He remembered the little boy crying near the fountain, and he realized that the feeling of helping someone, of being needed, had grown inside him and changed him deeply. He no longer felt aimless. He felt alive, purposeful, and full of hope. Over the next few weeks, Daniel's involvement at the center deepened. He began mentoring older children who struggled with school or had difficult home lives. Some had lost parents, some faced neglect, and others simply lacked guidance. Daniel learned to listen without judgment, to offer advice when asked, and to provide support even when it seemed small or insignificant. One evening, a girl named Mia approached him quietly after a group activity. She was one of the older children and had been withdrawn for weeks. "Daniel," she said softly, "can you help me with my homework? I don't understand this math problem." Daniel smiled and sat beside her. They worked through the problem slowly, step by step. At first, Mia was frustrated and wanted to give up, but Daniel encouraged her to keep trying. After several attempts, she solved it correctly. Her eyes widened in surprise and pride. "I did it!" she exclaimed. "Yes, you did," Daniel said, his voice warm. "See what happens when you don't give up?" Mia hugged him quickly before running off to join the others. Daniel sat back for a moment, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. These small victories, repeated over days and weeks, were slowly creating something larger. He was building trust, confidence, and a sense of security for children who often felt invisible. One afternoon, Daniel sat alone in the reading room, thinking about the children's stories and struggles. He realized that he wanted to do more than just volunteer occasionally. He wanted to create programs that would reach more children, provide them with skills, guidance, and the encouragement they needed to succeed in life. The thought felt overwhelming but also exciting. He began researching nonprofit organizations, community programs, and educational initiatives. He attended meetings, talked to educators, and learned about funding, logistics, and planning events. At first, it was intimidating. The work was much bigger than he had imagined, but the children he had helped and those he had yet to help kept him motivated. One day, while preparing a small workshop for children at the center, Daniel received an unexpected message. It was from the mother of the boy he had found in the park months ago. She thanked him again for his help and shared that Eli had started showing more confidence, making friends at school, and even helping his younger siblings. Reading her words, Daniel felt a powerful sense of connection. One simple act, she reminded him, had ripple effects that reached far beyond that single day. This realization strengthened his resolve. He knew that helping children, offering guidance, and providing support wasn't just a temporary task. It was a mission, and he was ready to commit himself fully. Daniel began organizing weekly workshops focused on reading, art, and life skills. Each session was designed to engage children, spark curiosity, and teach them practical skills while also building their confidence. He incorporated games, storytelling, and creative projects, making learning fun and interactive. Slowly, more children began attending, and word spread among parents in the community. He also began mentoring volunteers, showing them how to connect with the children, guide them patiently, and create a supportive environment. He discovered that leadership wasn't about authority. It was about listening, understanding, and inspiring others to care. The same patience and empathy he had used with the children now extended to the volunteers, creating a team united by a shared purpose. One sunny morning, Daniel arrived at the center to find the children gathered around a small bulletin board. They had been drawing pictures of their dreams, and the walls were covered with colorful sketches and words. Some wanted to be teachers, some wanted to be artists, some wanted to be scientists. Daniel walked among them, asking questions and listening to their hopes. Each child's dream reminded him of the importance of nurturing potential, of believing in possibilities, and of providing opportunities. As he looked at the drawings, Daniel felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He thought about how a single act, helping a lost child in the park, had grown into this vibrant, meaningful work. Every laugh, every story, every small accomplishment mattered. It wasn't always easy, but it was real and it was powerful. Months turned into a year, and Daniel had become an integral part of the community center. Children and parents alike respected him, volunteers looked up to him, and he had grown into a role he had never imagined for himself. He often reflected on the day he had found Eli in the park, realizing that the experience had not just changed his path, but it also shaped who he had become. One evening, after a long day of activities, Daniel walked home slowly, the city lights reflecting off wet streets from a brief afternoon shower. He thought about all the children he had helped, the ones he was currently mentoring, and those he had yet to meet. Each life he touched added purpose to his own. He realized that fulfillment wasn't about money, fame, or recognition. It was about connection, compassion, and impact. That night, Daniel sat quietly in his apartment, looking at the small collection of letters and drawings from the children he had helped. He traced his fingers over the colorful sketches, feeling a wave of gratitude and humility. He realized that life had a way of guiding people, sometimes through ordinary moments that turn extraordinary. One small act, a single decision to help someone in need, could transform lives in ways unimaginable. As he lay down to sleep, Daniel felt a deep sense of peace. He had found more than purpose. He had found meaning, fulfillment, and a reason to live fully. The world felt different now, brighter and full of possibility. And he knew that his journey was far from over. There were countless children to meet, countless lives to touch, and countless moments to create. He closed his eyes with a quiet smile, knowing that he had discovered something rare and beautiful: the power of caring, the strength of kindness, and the importance of being present for those who needed him most. The small spark ignited in the park had grown into a steady flame, guiding him toward a future filled with hope, compassion, and purpose. The months had passed, and Daniel had grown in ways he never imagined. The small spark that began with helping a lost child had turned into a steady flame of purpose that guided his life. He no longer felt empty or aimless. Every morning as he walked through the busy streets to the center, he felt anticipation and joy instead of dread or monotony. The children's laughter, their shy smiles, and even their struggles gave him a sense of fulfillment that money, comfort, or routine had never offered. One crisp Saturday morning, Daniel arrived at the center to find a group of children already gathered in the yard. Some were running around playing tag, while others were drawing with chalk on the pavement. The energy was contagious, and he felt his spirits lift immediately. As he entered, he was greeted by familiar voices calling his name, and the children ran toward him, each eager to share their latest creations or ask for help with their activities. Daniel noticed Eli, the boy he had helped months ago in the park, now attending a program at the center regularly. The memory of that first encounter came flooding back, the tears, the fear, and then the relief of being reunited with his mother. Watching Eli now, smiling confidently as he joined other children in games, Daniel felt a swell of pride. Not pride in himself, but pride in the resilience and growth of a child who had once been scared and alone. "Good morning, Eli," Daniel called, crouching to greet him at eye level. "Good morning, Daniel," Eli said cheerfully, running up to him. "Are you ready for today's project?" Daniel asked. "Yes. We're going to make our own storybooks," Eli replied, bouncing excitedly. Daniel smiled. Storybooks had been part of the reading program he had started, a way for children to express themselves creatively while learning to read and write. Each child would write a short story and illustrate it, giving them a sense of pride and accomplishment. It was amazing to see how much effort they put into these projects and how their confidence grew with each attempt. As the children settled down, Daniel walked around helping them brainstorm ideas, encouraging them to write freely and reminding them that there were no mistakes in creativity. Some children struggled to form sentences. Others worried their drawings weren't good enough, but Daniel was patient. He showed them how to turn every challenge into an opportunity to learn and improve. By the end of the session, the room was filled with laughter, chatter, and the proud smiles of children who had created something entirely their own. After the activity, Daniel noticed Clara waiting for him by the entrance. "Daniel, can I talk to you for a moment?" she asked. He nodded and followed her to a quiet corner. Clara looked thoughtful. "You've done something incredible here," she said. "The children trust you, the volunteers respect you, and parents are noticing the positive changes. I think it's time to take the next step." Daniel tilted his head, curious. "We've been talking about expanding the programs," Clara continued. "We want to reach more children, create workshops outside the center, and provide support for families in the community. We need someone who understands the children, someone who can lead and inspire others. Daniel, we'd like you to take on a coordinator role." Daniel felt a rush of emotions, excitement, nervousness, and a deep sense of responsibility. He thought about how far he had come, from the man who had walked aimlessly in the park to this moment where he had the chance to make an even bigger impact. "I'd be honored," he said quietly, feeling a surge of determination. The following months were challenging but incredibly rewarding. Daniel worked tirelessly, planning workshops, organizing community events, and mentoring both children and volunteers. Each new initiative brought new challenges, scheduling conflicts, limited resources, and unexpected obstacles. But Daniel faced them with patience and creativity. He learned to delegate, to ask for help, and to trust the volunteers he had mentored to step up and take responsibility. Together, they built a supportive network that strengthened with every passing week. One day, during a storytelling workshop, Daniel noticed a young boy sitting quietly in the corner. He looked sad, withdrawn, and hesitant to participate. Daniel remembered how it had felt to be scared and unsure when he first helped Eli, and he knew he had to approach the child carefully. "Hi there," he said gently, kneeling down to meet the boy's eyes. "Would you like to share a story with me?" The boy shook his head slowly. "That's okay," Daniel replied softly. "We can just start by drawing a picture. Sometimes it's easier to show what we feel before we say it in words." The boy hesitated but eventually picked up a pencil and began to draw. Daniel stayed close, offering encouragement without pressure. After a while, the boy smiled faintly and began talking about the drawing, a small scene of a park with children playing and adults watching over them. Daniel listened intently, praising him for his effort and creativity. By the end of the session, the boy had joined a small group, participating and laughing quietly. Moments like these reminded Daniel why he had committed his life to helping children. Every smile, every word spoken, every small accomplishment represented a life touched, a child given hope, and a world made a little brighter. Over time, Daniel's programs began to gain recognition. Local newspapers and community organizations highlighted the positive impact of the center and the work Daniel had done. Families who had once struggled to find support now had a safe place for their children, where learning was paired with care, attention, and encouragement. Volunteers who had started unsure now felt confident, inspired by Daniel's dedication and example. One evening, after a long day of workshops, Daniel walked home through the streets he had once found lonely and uninviting. Now they felt alive, filled with possibility and hope. He passed by the park where it all began and paused for a moment, looking at the fountain glistening under the streetlights. He remembered the day he had found Eli crying, the fear in the boy's eyes and the relief when his mother arrived. That single act had set his life on a new path, a path of compassion, purpose, and fulfillment. Daniel realized that life had a strange way of guiding people. Sometimes the smallest actions, helping a child, offering a hand, listening with patience, could transform lives in ways unimaginable. That day in the park had not only saved a lost child from fear and loneliness, it had saved Daniel from a life of emptiness. It had given him direction, purpose, and a sense of meaning he had never known before. He continued to reflect on the changes in his life. His apartment, once quiet and lonely, now felt like a place to rest and recharge. His days at the office were no longer burdensome because he carried the joy and fulfillment from the center with him. His relationships had deepened. He reached out more to friends, listened more to colleagues, and connected with people in ways he had avoided in the past. Daniel's journey also taught him patience, empathy, and the importance of being fully present. He had learned that real change doesn't happen instantly. It is slow, steady, and often invisible to the outside world. But every small act, every moment of care, encouragement, or attention adds up, creating ripples that extend far beyond what one can see. One afternoon, as he was closing the center after a workshop, Eli came running up to him with a small envelope in his hand. "Daniel, look what I made for you," the boy exclaimed. Daniel took the envelope and opened it carefully. Inside was a handmade card filled with colorful drawings and words that simply said, "Thank you for helping me. You make me feel safe and happy." Daniel felt tears welling up in his eyes. He knelt down and hugged Eli gently. "Thank you, buddy," he whispered. "You've made me feel happy too." As Eli ran off to join his friends, Daniel stood there holding the card. He realized in that moment that helping others was a two-way street. While he had guided and supported the children, they had also given him joy, purpose, and a renewed sense of life. Their trust, laughter, and growth were his reward. In the following months, Daniel continued to expand the programs, creating reading clubs, art workshops, and mentorship opportunities for older children. Each new initiative was built on the principle that every child deserves to feel seen, supported, and valued. He also started organizing community events where parents, volunteers, and children could come together, strengthening the bonds that held the community together. One evening, after a particularly successful event, Daniel walked home slowly, reflecting on his journey. He thought about all the children he had met, the lives he had touched, and the growth he had witnessed. He thought about Eli, Leo, Mia, and the countless others whose trust and smiles had become part of his life. And he thought about himself, the man who had once felt lost, aimless, and disconnected. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt truly complete. He understood that life's purpose isn't something to be found in wealth, status, or comfort. It is found in connection, compassion, and the courage to act when someone needs help. One small act of kindness, one moment of care, had changed his life forever. As he entered his apartment that night, Daniel placed Eli's card on his desk, a reminder of the journey he had undertaken. He sat down, reflecting quietly, a sense of peace and gratitude washing over him. He knew that there would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and obstacles to overcome. But he also knew that he had found a calling, a path that gave his life meaning, and a way to touch the lives of others in ways that truly mattered. Daniel lay down to sleep that night, smiling softly. He thought about the boy he had helped in the park months ago, the child who had sparked a transformation in his heart and mind. Helping him had been the beginning, but it had led to so much more. It had led to purpose, fulfillment, and the realization that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples that change lives forever. He closed his eyes, feeling a deep sense of contentment. His journey was far from over, but he had discovered the most important truth. Helping others, being present and caring deeply could transform not only the lives of those around him, but also his own. And with that understanding, Daniel finally felt at peace, ready to continue making a difference in the world, one child at a time.